Hey guys, this is George and I'm back with a new video. So this is going to be a very Predator-centric video. So we saw when it was announced back in 2019 that Disney had not only acquired the Marvel properties that Fox had the rights to, but they had also acquired a majority of the Fox Entertainment conglomerate. Fans like myself started considering what it could mean for the other newly acquired properties, and being the fanboy that I am, I specifically kind of honed in on the Aliens and Predator franchises, kind of wondering what's going to happen to these guys. So here we are in 2020, and in early July we got some teaser art of what Marvel has in store for these properties on the comic side of things. And even though I loved what Dark Horse did with these properties, I'm actually pretty excited to see Marvel take the reins and give us some new stories set in the Marvel universe. So in this video, I'm going to share my top picks for who I want to see take on the galaxy's most fearsome hunters, the Predators. Okay, so let's kick things off for the 10th entry on my list with probably one of the most predictable matchups on my list, but it's one I'd really like to see, so here goes. It's Predator versus Captain America. For some reason, I keep thinking of the original Predator movie when I think of this matchup, but honestly, it would be vastly different than when Dutch and his team took on the Predator, because obviously Cap is enhanced and probably has the same or an even greater level of physical strength than the average Predator. Regardless of the playing field, this matchup should be one for the ages, and I think both combatants would give as good as they get. I think what could give a Predator the edge in this fight would be their superior technology. We honestly don't know if they have weaponry that could negate or even break Cap's shield, so if so, it'd come down to a bloody fist fight, and it'd definitely be pretty interesting to see if Cap could survive this fight. So that's why I want to see Cap versus Predator. The next entry on my list is a bit of an odd one, but if given to us, I think it'd be a fantastic matchup. The matchup I want to see is Predator versus Blade the Vampire Hunter. Okay, so Blade has enhanced strength, speed, durability, and he's a weapons expert. So I actually think this would be a pretty even fight. But the thing I want to see most in the battle is a sword or bladed fight between a Predator and Blade. We got a cool sword fight in the Predators film, but Blade is a master swordsman, so if a Predator who's also a master with bladed weapons went after Blade, I think this would be a very cool matchup that would give us something we hadn't seen so far in a Predator versus book. Master swordsman versus alien blades master. I also think they could really push the horror aesthetic in the story, since Blade books are usually mature books. So how do you all think Blade would fare against the Predator? One thing is for sure, it would not be an easy fight for either combatant. For the 8th entry on my list, this is another matchup that I think it's only a matter of time before we see. It's Predator versus Black Widow. I definitely can't wait to see this matchup. Black Widow is one of my favorite characters. She is the world's deadliest former spy, and I think she's someone who restrains herself from using her full lethal capabilities because she's an Avenger and she wants to keep up the appearances. But man, if she cut loose, I think she could be deadly. And with the Predator, she might not need to hold back. And I think woe unto the Predator who comes after her, because Natasha does not play. She's tough as nails, she's highly intelligent, she's highly capable. I think she could be a fantastic matchup for a Predator. And when you think about how Natasha operates, if she did manage to defeat a Predator, she would make sure to keep it alive so she could make it spill the beans on the Predator homeworld, Predator society, and all of their Predator technology. Black Widow does not play, and she would bring the heat if a Predator were to go after her, and that's why I want to see this comic. I think the next matchup on my list would also be pretty awesome, and I think we're actually pretty likely to see it. And the matchup I'm talking about is Predator versus Conan the Barbarian. So the really cool thing about this story is that it could be set in ancient times or in the modern day Marvel universe, since Conan is currently operating in the present day Marvel comic book world. While people might think that Conan could be easy prey for a predator, I actually think he could be an incredibly dangerous adversary for any predator. I mean, here's why. He's not only bested armies of men, but he's gone toe-to-toe with mythical beasts and other supernatural threats that would crush any hero, but Conan comes out on top. He's a warrior baptized in blood, and I think if a predator were to target him, they need to bring their A game, because Conan would not go down without a fight. And hopefully we'll get to see this fight in a forthcoming comic. This is definitely a book I'm waiting for, so hopefully Marvel makes it happen. The 6th entry on my list is another one where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for a predator to go after someone this powerful. But when you think of the predator's mindset and their honor code of hunting the baddest creatures in the universe, it makes perfect sense they'd want a piece of the Hulk. Yeah, this would be a book I'd love to see, but I don't think a single predator would fare very well against the Incredible Hulk. So I think it'd be interesting if a whole elite team of predators went after him. Of course, the predator's weaponry could even the playing field and put Hulk against the ropes, so I won't count them out just yet. This is one matchup I've been wanting to see for a long time, and now that Marvel will be publishing Predator comics, I can't think of a bigger target than the Hulk, because predators love to take on the biggest and the baddest threats in the universe, and Hulk is the strongest there is, so I think the predators are going to have to bring it. So I can't wait to see the predators bring the battle to him. The 5th entry on my list is actually a pretty crazy one, and I say crazy in that the predator would have to be insane to take on someone like Carnage. So if a predator were to take on Carnage, I actually feel bad for any predator who decides to go after him, because he's psychotic, unstable, and homicidal. He's not just homicidal, he loves to kill. He lives for it. That's how he gets his kicks in life. But not for any sort of honor like the Predator code of hunting, but Carnage kills for fun. I think I remember one of Carnage's most terrifying moments in a comic when he actually just opens up a phone book and flips a page and finds somebody and then decides to go after them and kill him. That's the kind of evil these predators are going up against if they decide to go after Carnage. He has no moral compass and will gleefully eviscerate anyone without a second thought. So when I think about a predator going after Carnage, well, I don't think it's going to end well for the predator, and considering just how powerful Carnage actually is, I think the predators would have to send an elite predator or even a group of elite predators to try to take out Carnage. I think this matchup could potentially be awesome. In fact, an added bonus would be if we got to see the Predator bonded with a symbiote. I think that would be pretty cool. So what do you all think? How would Predator fare against Carnage? Am I giving Carnage way too much credit here? Or do you think the Predators will bite off more than they can chew if they chose a target like Carnage? The 4th entry on my list is kind of an odd matchup, but it's one I'd actually really like to see. It's Predator versus Miss Marvel. I'm a pretty big fan of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. I really like that she's a huge fangirl and does the whole fan fiction thing and kind of geeks out when she meets other heroes. And even when she's in costume, she seems to bring an excitement to being a hero that really reminds me of Spider-Man a lot. So don't get me wrong, I don't want to see her get killed and turn into a trophy, but I think a battle between her and the Predator could be an incredibly interesting one. One of the reasons I think it could be a pretty good battle or a pretty interesting battle is that she does kind of really interesting things with her powers. They would make for an interesting battle here because she's not too overpowered like somebody like Carnage or the Hulk, but she does have abilities that would be really useful in a battle against something as terrifying as a Predator. It would definitely be visually interesting to see this battle play out on the page. I also think with her pop culture knowledge, who's to say a Predator-esque movie doesn't already exist in the Marvel universe that she's seen that could somehow inform her battle strategy against the Predator. I think that would be kind of a cool meta thing to occur in the comic that could be useful, that I think would be unique to a character like Miss Marvel. Even though I think the odds are really against Miss Marvel, I think what I'm most interested in seeing is how she takes on a threat like the Predator, and this could be a pretty unexpected but great matchup for the Predator too. The third entry on my list that I'd really like to see is Predator versus the Punisher. Of course, the Punisher. I've been a Punisher fan for a long time, and in the pages of his books, particularly the Garth Ennis Punisher books, we've seen him overcome a vast number of threats in incredibly inventive ways. Say for instance, weaponizing zoo animals like polar bears and the boa constrictor, or just punting a mob boss like a football into a fire. And then in War of the Realms, we also saw the Punisher take on supernatural and otherworldly threats and hold his own against giant war trolls, dark elves, and other monstrous threats. So just to be clear, Frank Castle has no supernatural or even scientific enhancements. He's just a flesh and blood man, and he's managed to spark fear in the hearts and minds of Marvel villains and even heroes. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that the Punisher would be a prime target for hunting. I honestly think Frank Castle could give a Predator a run for its intergalactic money. For one thing, if you're going to go up against the Punisher, you have to know the Punisher makes up his own rules, and he doesn't operate under any normal hero pretenses. He will shoot first. He doesn't pull punches. He doesn't take chances. Even if the Predator were to corner Frank is a deadly hand-to-hand combatant who's gone up against the likes of Captain America, Wolverine, I think even Blade. And I honestly don't think Frank would be very happy about letting himself become a creepy trophy in some Predator ship. So this is a matchup I can't wait to see. Marvel, make this happen, please. The number 2 entry on my list is kind of another Predator versus no-brainer, but it's Predator versus Wolverine. This one's honestly not too far of a stretch, and it's actually been teased since way back in the early 1990s from an Aliens vs. Predator comic. I think it was Deadliest of the Species, where we saw a Predator who has what's implied to be like trophies from the X-Men. And I think one of them that we saw was like a metal-coated clawed hand or something, which was implied to be Wolverine, of course. So while this one is an obvious choice for a cool matchup that I hope to see, most people would probably think this is a very one-sided fight, seeing as how Wolverine has unbreakable bones and his advanced healing abilities, except I think we'd have to give consideration to the Predator's own arsenal. So if adamantium is the strongest metal on Earth, well, that's just on Earth. The Predators are an intergalactic species, so they've traveled galaxies and they've developed new technologies and advancements. So who's to say they haven't discovered a metal that's stronger than adamantium? In fact, in Predator 2, when Harrigan takes a piece of an alien spear to a forensic scientist, after it's analyzed, the scientists determined that the spear tip was not composed of any known material on the periodic table, or basically on Earth. So my thinking is that the Predators may actually have metals that could potentially exceed the strength of adamantium, which could really even up a matchup between them and Wolverine. The Predators even have a very unique item in their arsenal, as seen in the film Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Regardless of what you think of the film itself, most people, myself included, seem to really like the Wolf Predator, and one of the items he uses is this glowing blue liquid that seemingly destroys all traces of any organic substance. While we're not sure how this would fare against Wolverine's adamantium bones, there was no question that this is some powerful stuff, and I think it could potentially cause catastrophic damage to Wolverine, especially if it's strong enough to have an effect on adamantium. So that's what we know so far about a potential matchup between these two characters. And even though I love Wolverine and I don't want to see him turn into a creepy trophy lamp in some Predator trophy room, I think a Predator could definitely be the one to do in the Indomitable X-Men. So what do y'all think? And I think I saved the most interesting one for last. So the very first entry on my list, well, this one is for all the Marvels. So yeah, I went big with this one. And before you laugh this one off, I think you should know that Archie and his supporting cast have taken on a Predator before. And so I think a matchup between Predator and Mickey Mouse and the rest of the House of Mouse could actually be a really fun, interesting, cool matchup. And the matchup I want to see is Predator versus Mickey Mouse and the rest of the House of Mouse. So you might be laughing this one off. You might think, oh man, Predator is going to destroy these guys. But I want to give Mickey a little bit of credit here because him and his crew are pretty tough. I don't know if y'all played the Kingdom Hearts games, but they are badasses in those games. King Mickey, Donald, Goofy, And so I do not want to count out Mickey and his crew. So I definitely think that Mickey and his crew aren't necessarily as helpless as most people might think. Now, I'm honestly not sure if the execs at Disney would allow something like this to be put to page. I mean, could you imagine a page where Predator is collecting Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse's skulls? Yeah, so it's unlikely, but it's still possible. And after the enormous Fox-Disney deal and the fact that Sony and Disney are still working together on MCU Spider-Man, well, I'd say stranger things have happened. So I think this matchup could definitely be a pretty awesome battle between the Mouse and his allies and the deadliest hunters in the universe. So while the odds are definitely stacked against Mickey and his allies, I do not want to count them out, and I'd like to see a story where Mickey and his crew actually give the Predators a run for their money and definitely don't let themselves be turned into trophies as easy as I think a lot of people would think they would be. So regardless of what you think the outcome would be in this matchup, there's no denying that this matchup could be an incredibly interesting one to see in comic book form. So my number one entry is Mickey and the House of Mouse versus Predator. So that's it for this video, and I'd love to know who you'd like to see the Youches take on in their first Marvel Comics battle. If you liked the video, leave a like, share it if you loved it, subscribe for more comics content, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.